Welcome to the 10th episode of the Interstice podcast. I made a few notes this time. I find that helps with flow. Thank you for tuning in wherever you are, whether that's on the channel or on Spotify or iTunes or wherever it is. Thanks very much to everybody who wrote in from the live stream I did recently, and those who are watching the podcast who know that if you write me at davetrippanon@gmail.com, then your questions are going to get answered in this podcast. I'll get through as many as I can, mark them all up. Truth be told, my channel is neither big nor small, we'll say, and anybody tells you that they're too busy to answer questions, given the size of channel, if you see anybody similar to mine, they're full of shit. Because you're really, really busy, but the amount of interaction and engagement you're getting is never so overwhelming that you can't correspond with people. So thank you very much for writing to me. We're going to do it the usual way here. We got sort of a discussion period to begin with. And then in the second half, if I don't cover everything, we'll continue. But of course, we're going to drop in on some of those questions that were written to me in the email. So I wanted to talk about what is most pressing in my life right now. Obviously, people who've been following along, you know that I will be switching houses soon and switching jobs. And that's, of course, a big, difficult time. And it's a real test. It's like you got to keep your head on straight. And there's going to be a lot of challenges, a lot of stress. And if you handle it well, then I think it kind of can exhibit how you've progressed. And if you fail in it, then it also highlights how you may have had a higher opinion of yourself and your abilities than is accurate. And maybe both can be true. In my case, I feel like it was a strong both to each of these. But let's talk about just the exciting, fun things. So obviously, when you live in the countryside, there's a cost of living here that's really, really nice. And that's a huge benefit. Now, I'm going to move from what is truly the outback to what is a medium-sized city, but it's crazy to me because it is, still far away from Tokyo. It's much, much closer. It is a full city, where here I am in the true boonies, and I'm going to get a larger apartment, and I want to talk about why that was important to me. It wasn't purely indulgent, not at all, but how for all of the things that I gained, how it had only increased. But very carefully, I looked at dozens and dozens and dozens of places, and it will only increase my rent by about ichiman yen. So you're looking there at about $100 increase on the cost of what I pay now. I currently pay 55,000 yen. I've been transparent about that. It's available in my apartment tour video if people have been curious. And it will become 65,000. Now, what more am I getting for that? Well, I worked it out this way, that if I'm going to pay $100 more, then I should be able to definitively answer, broken down, what are the things that I'm gaining that would account for that cost. If you can't see that, then what are you doing? So I broke it down into 1,000 yen or $10 increments where I thought that I was getting more value. So one of the big ones, obviously, is the city. That's really, really exciting. And I'm still going to live about 10 minutes away from downtown. That's my commute, 15 minutes away from my work. But it's huge, where I feel like I got two bonuses here, that I love going to the onsen and I love going to the gym when I don't have a pinched nerve. I still go now, but it's pathetic. It's all cardio and abs. It just breaks my heart. But now, because of the new place that I have, the proximity that I have to both the gym and the onsen is going to be 10 minutes. Well, it's now currently 30 to 35 minutes that I would go for either of these places. So boom, right there. It was not even within the house, just the proximity to the amenities that I'll have access to is awesome. I'm really excited about that. In addition to that, now let's move on to the house. Oh, and I love going to the movies when the movies do finally come out here. There's a big, huge Aeon Mall that's also in the city, and that's going to give me another, where it's now about 30 minutes away to a movie. It's going to be about 10 minutes away to a movie, which is awesome again. Although there's something else that breaks my heart, is the fact that movies come out so late here, and you have to be religiously careful on the internet not to see anything, because of course, if you're on Reddit at all or something like that, everybody's talking about major releases and you'll get spoiled. you'll get spoiled, or it will be spoiled. That's a better way to say it. So 3 things right there. I got easier access to movies. I got it's kind of the city thing, right? That you're going to have all these amenities that you can get access to. Now, the next thing, probably I want to break it down in order of ways that it is important to me. So one of the big things, I've kind of made this living room that I have here, for those watching and for those listening, you can imagine. It's a multi-purpose thing for me, where I've got it's a living room, and it's also in quotes studio, not really a studio at all. And I constantly shift things around if I want to do something like this, for example, like the podcast. I'm living in now a 1 LDK. The new place that I'll be moving to is a 2 LDK. So finally, I'm going to have a dedicated room into which I will turn a studio. And that's going to have all sorts of multi-purpose, wonderful elements of it. For people who watch on the channel, I'm thinking about investing in like back curtains behind me, which would look cool. So it'll be like, I don't know, like a graffiti wall or something if you catch the podcast on the channel. It will mean that not every time do I have to rearrange the setup, so the framing will change each time. Little things like this matter to me when you want them to look good. In addition to that, I'll have like I said, dedicated space. This isn't quite related to the space, but I'm going to upgrade to likely have another mic so I would be able to interview people. But in essence, what is so exciting there with an extra room is to have a dedicated space to the creative work that I do, which has always been a big priority of mine. And I'm really, really excited for that. Next up, now I have been lucky, I would say I've lived here for 4 years, and I suppose it's either in the last year or 2 years, I have had good neighbors who live above me, and they've been quite quiet. It's a couple. They came and gave me some dish soap when they arrived. Very kind of them to do so. But before that, I mean, it was incredible, the noise created by the family and the children. There was actually, in Japanese apartments where everyone is usually so considerate of each other, there were multiple "you are making too much noise" notifications sent to our apartment block. And it's so crazy the way that they do it in Japan. The Catholic shame that they heap on you is that it's not only sent to you, but if you receive a notification of your sound, you're creating some kind of like what do you want to call this? Like sound violation. If you are being too loud, then they're going to send the notification to everyone. And at first, when I got it, I was like, what kind of racist discrimination is this? I'm quiet as a mouse in here. But no, it wasn't that at all. It was that they send it to everybody, and that's common practice when you're in a Japanese apartment, because it's like they're aware now that everybody is being aware that there's somebody in this place who is making too much noise, and you don't want to do that. So at times, this apartment I've been in has been quite loud, with like kids running back and forth, up and down in a tiny space upstairs. Maybe that's why they ran so much. You need to take them out to the park, let them off the leash, let the kids run wild. And I can't fault the fact you got kids. It's difficult, but hey, it was a pain in the ass for me. And so the new place that I have is designed as a terrace house. That meaning that although this apartment that I live in now is 52 square meters, not square feet. I'm in 52 square meters, but the new apartment that I'm moving into is 60 square meters. So it's bigger, but not much bigger. But the way that the space is organized is to put it between 2 floors. So I am now both the ground floor and the second floor tenant, which is awesome. So I will no longer have anyone above me. That's huge. Really, really, really cool. So I'm going to enjoy that fact very much. Also, in terms of allocating space, where in this room that I have now, where I do the creative stuff, and hey, if I want to sit down and watch a movie, then it's both a creative space and a living room, which means it's not quite enough space for each. That now the living room downstairs will be a dedicated living room. You can look forward to, actually, you don't have to hear me just talk about this. When I move to the new place and get everything set up, of course, being the J-vlogger, as you would call me, that I am, there will be an apartment tour video. And I know that for YouTube is like catnip. So I'll enjoy making it, and I'm sure people will enjoy getting an actual like walk around. view of everything that I'm talking about, which that'll be cool, I think. And then the list just goes on. The master bedroom in the place has a balcony. I don't have a balcony, of course not. I'm on the ground floor. It's bigger than the room that I have now for the master bedroom, so that's awesome. The kitchen downstairs has, not the kitchen, the bathroom. I love the bathroom here. I moved from a Leo Palace where it's this little space capsule that when you take a shower in the morning, you go into the shower and you can barely, I don't know, if you're anywhere near 6 feet and like when you turn around, your like elbows are bashing into the wall. I may exaggerate a little bit here, but it is tiny. And it's big here. I like it here, but this place is going to have a full size bathtub in it. You could dance if you want to. You could leave your friends behind. And it's an incredible space. So the bathroom is the shower itself, I should say, is a huge upgrade. So obviously I'm really, really excited about having that like nicer space in the morning. I love showers. I shower in the morning and the evening. I'm one of these crazy people. And to have like it be not a little space capsule that I have to shower in is a big deal to me. So I really, really like that. Also, if you're going to have it, we are impacted by the environment that surrounds us. And I am true countryside where I am now, but looking out my window is okay. It looks into this little acorn orchard, which this area is famous for. Acorn? No, chestnut. But it's not that beautiful. This area, all around it, it's a rare area that has forest grown all around it. So I'm going to have a really nice green forested view, which who would not want that? No matter where you are, you can have a bigger space or a smaller space, but if you have a nice forested area, that's fantastic. So I'm really looking forward to that. Although it being still winter, not yet spring, it's all, everything's died. There are some evergreens off in the distance, but I can't see them that well. Another element that I really, really like, it's not only a corner apartment, but it is also going to be the innermost apartment. So where, of course, the outermost is closest to any roads that might be there, the innermost is the one that has the greatest distance, therefore is the quietest. So it will also be quiet to live there as well, which is fantastic, which is really, really good. So we got the extra bedroom, we got the closeness to amenities, we got the bigger size in the living room, or not the living room, in the master bedroom. We got the larger bathroom. We got the dedicated space for a studio. We got just bam, 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 bam. So many things that when I walked away and I looked at the fact that, I'm going to be spending about $100 extra a month. Is this worth it? Absolutely it is. So that's really, really cool. The next thing that has been both terrifying and wonderful in terms of an opportunity to stretch your wings and test your abilities here. Of course, when you're leaving your apartment here in Japan, there's a whole bunch of busy work that needs to be done in terms of turning off utilities, switching utilities, signing up for new utilities. And it's no big deal. Nobody need beat themselves up if you rely on like a Japanese friend to do all of this for you, or simply a friend who speaks really good Japanese. But if you can do it yourself, it's incredibly rewarding. Now, for some of the heavier lifting, like going over contract details, I got this fantastic friend and he's helped me in the process where I set up looking at the place, and I could have even for the preliminary round, I think, gone in and looked at it alone, but absolutely it was cool to have him there just to confirm the slightly more complex details when we got into the contract work. But I am happy to say that for all the utilities, it's basic stuff, but it's not basic if you haven't been practicing, and especially difficult if you're not used to listening to people on the phone. But I had, as much as I possibly could, made the effort to phone all these utilities companies to shut down my accounts and transfer them to the new apartment. And yeah, it's small victories that feel huge. That's how I have to think of them, because do you need anything more than like, you could probably get away with this with like, maybe not N5. If you were a very confident N5 is almost non-ability in Japanese. It's mostly like, a little bit of vocab. But you'd be more looking like you were an N4 if you were calling into these places. And like I say, the listening on the phone, not being there in person, makes it a little bit more intimidating. And I did this stuff and it felt really good. That should give you an indication of just how far I still have to go with my Japanese, but that felt great. And well, it was horrifying. And I want to admit that, where I always want to be as genuine as I can in terms of like my accomplishments and the things that freak me out here. I felt good about it. I could be better, obviously, but that was one more thing that I know that so much satisfaction is taken from independence in Japan, and that you can survive here alone, and the more that you speak the language. So that was really good. So I was getting a lot of that done. I think it's, to turn it onto a sort of another topic, I think it's a good opportunity as well to be reminded in our lives of humility, to be humble. I think is always like a really, really important thing. Do we want to be beaten down by humility and a feeling of helplessness constantly? No, but helplessness and humility are different things. I think it's only when at an extreme that humility can become something really negative, like embarrassment and shame. It's not that. And it's been a great exercise for me to feel like it's good to be accountable for your own improvement. Work really hard, try your best to be as independent as possible, but there's nothing wrong with asking for a little bit of help. And it should also show you, have you treated people well? Because nobody's going to want to help anybody who's being an asshole to them. So if somebody's there when you need them to be, then you're probably doing a couple things right. And that's a good feeling. So I'm thinking about this, going on a rant now. Nah, not a rant. Going off on a limb here, thinking about how I've lived. This will be, when I move to this new apartment, this will be the third apartment that I've lived in. And that's a huge deal. Moving to this apartment was massive. I lived in a Leo Palace when I arrived here, as so many people do. And it's incredible how much I enjoyed that experience, all things being relative. I learned to live minimally. Anybody with more experience, as I gained, would say that you're getting ripped off and there's far better to get, especially if you're living in the countryside. But when experience is relative, you don't feel that at the time. And that more becomes important when you go on to other things. And so you don't need to feel beaten down when you weren't yet out of that when you arrive. And I look back fondly on that. And the time that I spent there, and having hilariously like a roommate for a long period of time. We had a great relationship, I've told many times in different videos, and that was a feat in itself, that we lived in a 22 square meter apartment. It was like a bunk bed situation, and we were great friends at the end of it. And I really miss the guy like a brother. But then to come here and, well, pedal to the metal, doing as much as I could to appreciate every single moment and try and improve and evolve as like a filmmaker and a creator and an editor and a colorist and a sound engineer and all these things. It still felt like I could have accomplished so much more. I could have read so many more books. That's tangent off of the things, but like all these things that I could have done more of. And 4 years went by like, I won't snap, but it went by like nothing, which I figure is some measure of how much I was proactive, but still that I could have done more. And now I find myself looking at this next moment in my life with a new apartment and a significant turn of events to find myself working in a new job. And all I can think is, where somebody might make a prayer for something, I don't want anything other than to not betray the ambitions that I have, whether it be at my workplace, to be a proactive person, enriching the lives of people around me, working hard to make my life meaningful. But it's so important to really treasure these moments. And it's cliche and it's been said a million times, but it needs to be said again and again and again. Our lives, for the time being, pass in an instant, and the greatest tragedy is a life unlived. And so I'm taking this moment now to make things matter to use every single second that I have to both enrich my life and I hope make the lives of others around me a little bit better. And I appeal to you who's listening to this, don't waste it. Anything that you can do. I think honestly living is being, well, kind to those around you and trying to help them, being honest to the things you care about. Really find passion in things and pursue them. If you feel in yourself that there's something that you love, don't commit the crime of not pursuing it. If you love it, pursue it as best you can. I understand, of course, life is conditional on other responsibilities that we have that do or do not allow us to do things, but it's the way to live. It's the way to live, and it's the way to, I don't think minimizing regret is sort of like a boring way to live your life, but it's maximizing awe and magic. That's the way to look at it. So one other thing that I'd like to touch on here before we move on to the second half of the podcast, I got it written down here. I've written down it. This is not particularly eloquent, but it's a leaping off point for what I'll say. Don't let the environment of your mind lie to you. And so that is to say that there's so many what we view as rational conclusions, and we're basing our next behavior off of these rational conclusions, which are actually based on our emotional state, and then therefore what we think is a rational action taken according to how we're thinking is quite the opposite. It's totally irrational because it's so shaped by the negativity in our mind that our negativity will rationalize any sort of stupid behavior that it seems like the right thing to do. And I talk about this because of the amount of stress that I've had recently between the new job and moving and other things. And it is, again, like, it's not like I haven't encountered this before in my life. I have, but it's always good to remind ourselves to be vigilant against how negativity is shaping our behavior. Pain will make monsters of us all. If you've ever seen, is it Nausicaa? I can't remember it. It's the one where at the beginning of the Studio Ghibli movie, this town gets attacked, and then it's this like beautifully animated monster that eventually they kill. I've told this story probably in a couple podcasts or something, but when they kill it, and all this black shadow that had enshrouded its body fades away, they actually see that it was a spirit of the forest, and it wasn't actually a demon, but it was a spirit that had been put in pain and so became a demon, making the point of what I'm talking about. So yeah, taking it out of the whimsical world of Studio Ghibli, but examining in our own lives, when am I doing this really because it's rational? Or am I doing this because I'm in pain or I'm stressed that I view this as rational, but actually it's totally asinine, cynical, angry, perhaps vengeful behavior, which most of these behaviors, here's the thing, here's the kicker, less about you being altruistic and kind to your fellow man and women. It's more, it's going to hurt you. It's self-destructive. It's like you could look at this advice as kind of like a thought for looking out for yourself. You will not put your foot in your mouth. You won't do something so stupid if you are in a better state of mind. If you're angry, walk away, calm down, return to a conversation when you're ready to have that conversation like a reasonable human being. If you're feeling stressed, don't believe, have a good night's sleep. Go to sleep. Sleep it off. Don't make any decisions at night. That's when we're most fatigued, and that's when the world looks darkest, both literally and figuratively. So that was something I thought worth talking about, especially given my experience currently, which is like 100%. When I'm solving issues, when I'm moving forward, I've never felt so good. But the way that things stack up right now, if I don't, it's absolutely dire on the impact that it has on my psyche, and then like a domino effect, all my further choices that I'm making because I'm a little bit stressed about this, and then your stress then contributes to greater stress. And I know that this is something that we all do. I'm human. I'm just like you. There's there's so much to be said for shared experience. It's kind of like I was talking about the most recent video that I made, which if you haven't checked out, please do, on the benefits of being an outsider, where it's kind of ironic the times that we feel most alone, that we feel most ostracized or secluded, are often, that's like one of the most commonly felt experiences of everybody on the planet. And so if you feel, it's oftentimes like if you think you're having a singular experience, that's when you're probably having an experience most like and most similar to and most shared by all your other fellow human beings. So those are a few thoughts that I've been running through here for the past while, from moving to the house to, have some humility, to making moments matter, all of which I think are eternally relevant. So now that we've done this, I want to do the sort of mid-cast reminder that if you'd like to get your questions answered, because that's what we're going to go into next, write me at davetrippanon@gmail.com. I will put them in my received question folder. They're likely to get onto the podcast. Thanks so much for everybody writing in, and thanks so much everybody who've listened this far. Let's continue with the second half. We've got, if I look here, it was actually a pretty good amount that's built up, starting back from February 7th. Now, the first question that we're starting with here comes from Tolibera. So I may have answered this in a previous one. I'm being, from now on, committed. I will be more diligent in clearing out whichever ones, but this is a good question to answer, and it's one I think is kind of unique that people don't often consider, but happens all the time. So, hey Dave, I was wondering if you have any advice about post-interview anxiety. Everybody's anxious before the interview, but then they forget this. I just had my JET interview, and now I'm running all the I shoulda saids. Any advice would be greatly appreciated. So, the way that I look at this for interviews is that what you should do if you want to experience none of this afterwards, or as much as you can. I mean, sometimes stressors are going to stress. You can't stop that. That's the way that people are. So no matter what you say, it's almost like they're secretly enjoying it. What I would say is that this is usually a question of preparation. So if you prepare a great deal before you have an interview, then that allows you, after the fact, to walk away knowing classically, as you've heard before, that having given your all, there's nothing else that you can do. And so you can let that rest in your mind. Now, another way that I like to look at this, which, say, for example, you've not done that, it's also to consider that the things that may sometimes prevent you from being successful in an interview are arbitrary, are irrelevant to the skill set that you bring to the job. And I can say absolutely, so certain, with great certainty, that this is the showcase of this is so often JET, where the variety and inconsistency of their hiring practices is jaw-dropping. Now, I don't have the exact statistics, so this is anecdotal at best, bear in mind, but the uneven hiring that I've seen of the most skilled, capable people that absolutely you would think would be hired and are, but then the people who aren't, who are absolutely incapable, socially awkward to the point of being, it's prohibitively difficult to communicate with them. It seems that they're hired equal hand in hand. Now, I know that a lot of people are hiring and that it's a difficult task and all of that, but still, it illustrates my point that certainly you should take stock when you've gone through an experience like this. And if it's you, it's you. And you should accept that. And I think, of course, that examining how you can improve is a part of being a better human being, if we want to say such a thing exists. But then at the same time, there are these dice that are constantly being rolled with every action we take, which are chaotic. It's a dice roll. They fall, and they fall where they may, and it is totally separate of what we may or may not have done. And so the best prepared among us will fail, and the least prepared will succeed. And that's life. And so being able to look at all turns, good or bad, as the same, to see what it was, that line, to see success and failure as the same imposter, then you won't let it get to you. And I mean, it is so true. I talk about like subjectivity and relativity of things, where, so what if you got what, like who? I mean, you care. We invest in things and we take a subjective personal stake in our in our failures, and that's about living life. That's about being in it, and that's good. But to live both ways at once is possible, where you can feel it and you can have that experience of being invested in what you did, but then never lose sight of the fact that until they've, taken you to the guillotine, that you can try again, and there are other ways to try. And what really ultimately is your goal? Is it to work for Jet and Jet alone? Well, then by design, you do have an ultimate failure, because you've set for yourself something that may potentially have only one finality, which is that you do not get it, or it has a binary finality where you do or you do not get this. And this is the only path. But if your goal is to come over to Japan, well, then who cares about Jet? You go with something else. You find your way in, however you can find a way in, and you don't let however those cosmic dice fell to upset you. You take it all as the same. So fantastic question, right on. I'm going to remember to write these people back when I finish to let them know that I answered their question and they should check the podcast. So thanks very much for your question. Okay, so this is question for the podcast. Okay, so now I absolutely know that I answered perhaps the last one before, because I answered this one. That's okay. Okay. So now we've actually got one from the patron here. Oh, no. Oh, wait. No, I answered this one directly. Yeah, this is some classy podcasting. Wait, yes, no, maybe what? I answered directly because this was a patron, but we'll answer it here on the podcast as well. So it's, hey, Dave. This comes from Chris. In your experience in Japan, with anyone from JET or English-relating teaching jobs, have you known any who brought any children along? And if so, do you have any information on how they did it? So here's the way I look at it. Do I know specifically people who came over at the point at which they came over? No, but I do know people who had children before they came here, and so I know that it was accomplished by them. And then in addition to that, I think about the greatest concern that people have is this going to be a plus or a minus when it comes to me getting hired at the end of the day with a company? And I actually think if you intend to bring your children, that this counts for you, not against you. Because there's something I've talked about before, is how if you are... I just had I got that weird sensation sometimes where you realize it's just you sitting in a room talking to yourself. But let's continue. If you are coming over, one of the greatest concerns that people have is that companies have when you come over, is that, are you going to commit? Are you going to stay? And where I kind of took that for granted, it was not some great thing overcome for me to say that I would stay for a while. I so intended to, and I feel comfortable in settings like this. But actually, it's probably the number one problem is people who come over, they flake, and then they peace out after a not so long period of time for ridiculous reasons. Like, I've seen somebody who was like, I came over and just the quality of the school was so crap, and like it was nothing like I'd seen at home, so I ran away. And I'm like, you saw a place for 3 months and you saw one school? Like, do you not acknowledge that there would be different experiences at different schools? Like, so people flake. And why I think then, if you have dependents when you come over to Japan, and why that's a good thing, well, it's because if you have dependents, then this means that you have to be dependable. And that means that something like a contract, if you have kids, you're going to think a lot more seriously about when your job starts and ends. And that for a company is a good thing. So they'll think, okay, this guy has children, this girl has children, so they need this job, and so they're not going to flake. And so my opinion is that, well, the paperwork is going to be more involved that it's actually, yeah, it's a good thing for you, and it could work in your favor. So thanks very much for supporting me on Patreon and for your message here, Chris. Hope that lent a hand. Okay, next. Here we go. All right, now this is new. Absolutely. Okay, this comes from William. Okay, hello. I figured it would be a good idea to reach out to you via email regarding some popular English teaching positions in Japan. I'm a college graduate, 40 years of age, and looking for a change in scenery. I previously mentioned a recent visit to Osaka last month. While I enjoyed the trip, Osaka was a bit too busy for my liking. Fair enough. If I remember correctly, one of your teaching-related videos recommended staying away from the larger English recruiting companies due to their high turnover. Not to stay away from them, but to recognize what use they have. That's what I would say. Any recommendations you could provide regarding reputable English teaching schools, or if you're aware of any school open to overseas applications with visa sponsorship, please let me know. Thank you for your time. So, what I would say to this, Will, is that kind of the point I was sort of corrective of there a moment ago is that there is nothing wrong with these high turnover dispatch companies. There's nothing wrong with them. Sure, there's a lot wrong with them. So I don't mean in every single respect, but I mean in terms of how they're useful. Yeah, they're corrupt and they mess around with hours and stuff for like, things like health insurance and pension and stuff. But you're not working for them so that they be an amazing, incredible company that you spend your rest of your life with. They are there usefully as a way to get into the country. And I will sing this song to the end of my days, or so long as we're on the topic of teaching. And in that way, they're fantastic. So they get you into the country. Now, having said that, then once you're in the country, use them for like a year, which is all they expect of you. And in that year, you're looking for better work. There'll be people I know who laugh at this point, listening to the podcast, the number of times I talk about this. And I don't say that cynically, but it's like I said, shared experiences. How many people have had this shared experience? And so also, I don't think that 9 times out of 10 that the companies as well, say you didn't go with one of these dispatch companies, say you did find a company that was like a little bit better in the first year that you might be here than one of these dispatch companies, I do not think that they can ever compete with a position that you will find once you are here, even just in the country with a working visa that can now be transferred into anything else. And so therefore, why worry about splitting hairs if something is just that much incrementally better than this thing? Stop splitting hairs. Recognize a stepping stone for a stepping stone. And that minutia is what's going to get you bogged down, going to prevent you from moving on to the next stepping stone, the next part of your adventure. Not that you shouldn't love every single moment of it, as I talked about in the first half. But again, it's also like almost for that reason where I'm saying this sort of stressing unnecessarily, perhaps answering the last question, where there's a way that these things simply will go, and reasonably so, which is that your first experience is not the one to ask the question at the beginning, how can I find the absolute best job? You don't find the best job at the beginning. You find the best job when it would later on make sense for it to be. And that can be quite quick. I also don't believe so much in a traditional ladder of that you can't make exponential leaps up this ladder, but there is always a beginning. There's always a beginning. And that beginning is rife with foot in the door, stepping stone, small apartment kind of stuff. So that's what I would say to that. But hey, if all of what I said there didn't work for you, Altia, I suggest Altia. They seem okay. Somebody sent me a bunch of emails recently, which is fair, and it's good to stay with your eyes open, that Altia was up to some shenanigans. But I still stand by the fact from what I've seen of Altia and their hiring that it seems to be a hell of a lot better than other dispatch companies. Yet, of course, they're still up to all kinds of shit. So my point remains true. Those are my thoughts. I hope that helps, Will. All right, so moving along. All right. This is from Strix. That can't be. Oh, yeah. Okay. I was like, that's not the actual name. So it's okay. I'll discuss about tech engineering stuff on a later email. But for now, here's a question. If you were an entrepreneur, what would you do to get a business running in the countryside of Japan, not the main cities? I would start out with an IT tech related company, then also something along the engineering lines. After all, there are a lot of sake breweries, and therefore something along the biotech lines would be a kind of smart choice. Said as a question. So how would I say this then? Well, the traditional business out in the countryside, the easiest one would be that you were running sort of like in a kaiwa and you were doing a private English sort of speaking thing. But I would say potentially out in the countryside, what might work well for you, of course, where you could harness the cost of living here, which is so cheap, and make use of that fact, while still at the same time doing something slightly more ambitious, perhaps. Not that you can't be incredibly successful. Let's say different than an English school. IT is a very, very good way to go because, of course, anything that only requires an internet connection is amazing and really, really good. I mean, if you were an incredible photographer, you could do the same thing. And if you lived off of your the photos that you did, but a lot of times photographers as well will do workshops, which is cool. I think that's actually cool because you get to be a mentor as well. Biotech, I don't know enough about biotech, although it's a topic that I'm extremely interested in. I'm reading Lifespan right now. So tech related, yes, naturally tech related is a really good choice to make. Now here's something else. Ooh, bumping my mic. Here's something else that I would consider for a really cool idea. If you have the capital, it's good to own land. And if you were able to pick an area of Japan that was yet countryside, yet was still an attractive travel destination, then adapting buildings into like B&B, homestay, per night rentals, you can make a lot of money, like fantastic amounts, obviously, because the cost mostly in Japan is on the land. It's not on the structure, so you can have a quite nice structure, which is appealing for people to stay in, and then you can be, paying off your mortgage payment for the month with like 2 nights of somebody staying there, and then you have tenants for something like a week and a half of the month, and you're way in excess of what your initial payment would be. And so real estate and rental spaces for holidays that's a great one. And you could do very, very well for that. I'm letting that out from under the hat. That's something I've considered. That's why it so easily comes to mind that you would want to. But if you want to do this, like living in Japan, something that's very important for this as well, and I share information freely. We are made stronger together. If you are a permanent resident, and this is why I keep all of my tax information, because it's on a point system that you become a permanent resident, you are going to get a far, far, far superior loan from the banks if you are a permanent resident, of course, because what Japanese bank wants to lend some quite large amount of money to somebody if they don't actually have permanent residency. And then if you do that, it's great because you can also, if you're doing that investment, if you're reinvesting in the country, you're starting a business here, then that means that you can apply for the manager's visa. And the manager's visa basically takes a company that has about $50,000 invested in it. And then once $50,000 has been invested in the business, then you need to have sales per year to retain it. But it's like a, what is it? It's like a 5-year visa or something like that. It's fantastic. If you can get into business will treat you well. So I hope that answers your question well. Hope you found that interesting. This is great. So this comes from Legend Man. It says, "Hi, my name is, and I'm from the Netherlands, and I'm 34 years old. My achievements are work, study, live in Japan. My plan. Oh, my 34 old. My achievements are work study, live in Japan. Okay. What's going on there? My plans are in about 3 years to go Nihon. Oh, okay. Go Nihon Japanese language school. Okay. So this is like a language school for 2 years. I'm kind of frustrated now because it's going to be really hard for me to achieve my goals in Japan because I've got autism. All right. No problem. PDD, NOS, brain function disorder, for example. I see. Okay. I need to have some extra high, let's say, permissions or help assistance from my boss to do full-time work. I don't have a bachelor degree to teach English. Also, I've tried to learn more English, but the problem is, if I can become an English teacher, can I do other work maybe? What are my options? My options are quite small because of my autism. I hope you can help me and consider what I can do. And is it possible for me to achieve my goals and dreams? I think, how would I approach this? I want to give this careful consideration. So I think you got a good thing here, Legend Man, when you're talking about language school. Because if you have, it cannot be stressed enough. It's like, it's the golden key as well it should be, and it should never be, how would I put it, underappreciated. And it's why I work so hard, even though I am a mess of a student. I work hard, but bad student of Japanese in success. If you could make an incredible go of those 2 years at the language school and you could really get your Japanese to a good level, I would say, man, you go for an N2. I mean, I would, and that's the benefit you have there if you're going to go into school, is that you can be single-mindedly focused on the language. That is somewhat of a disadvantage that I have now, is that my time is spread across a number of things. And of course, we develop more quickly with focused effort. If you could go into that, I would say aim for N2. So what I'm saying to you is that you would get fluent. You got to get fluent. You got to be able to read, likely write. But if you did that, then I think you are so valuable as a bilingual foreigner at that point. Certainly, let's not dance around the fact that your autism will make things challenging, more so even that you do not have a degree. But with that benefit, there are, I think, opportunities that would become available to you that I can't even say what they would be, because there are so many options that can open up given those circumstances. And at the very least, you've become fluent in another language, and then that's this incredible success and part of your story that you have. So I would suggest, as you've already laid out for yourself, go into that language school and study like you have never studied before and succeed and become fluent. And then I am confident, I do not have faith, I am confident that you could find something that would allow you to achieve your goals and dreams. And I think that you would have already somewhat done so to have had that experience at the language school and to have achieved that level of mastery of the language, I think. Thank you very much for your email, Legend Man. I hope you find that a somewhat useful response to your question. Okay, next. Okay, this comes from Xenon. Okay, hi, my name is Xenon, we'll say, and it's been a while since I last sent you a mail. Oh, okay, cool. You can write in more than once, that's worth noting. Though I'm fairly certain you get way too many emails to remember me. I don't specifically, but hey, that's all right. Let's get to know each other now. I'll get straight to the point. It's my last year in high school right now, and I'm going to try and apply for the University of Gothenburg, where I'll study English teaching for 5.5 years. Well done, sir. Probably come out with a license. I've recently watched your video about getting an English teaching job in Japan as a non-native English speaker that you made about 3 years ago. Though it gave me some courage, it also made me a bit scared. Everywhere I look, every video I've watched, and every article I've read said that getting a job as a non-native English speaker in Japan is really hard, even though I've studied English for almost 13 years, and even though my English speaking ability is above average in my country. And that includes my grammar and pronunciation. I can tell your email is better well written than many people who are native. I'm fairly certain that it won't do that much in the future when I'm going to try to apply for jobs since I'm not a native English speaker. Since it's been 3 years since you made your video about how non-native English speakers can find English teaching jobs, I wanted to ask you how your view has changed in the past couple of years, and it has. That's worth asking. Do you think that it is 100% fully possible for someone like me to find a job, and do you think it's easier or harder now than what you originally thought? Do you think that JET is a possibility? I don't think so. I think JET is a hard native or not native. I may be wrong, but I'd say that's irrelevant for what I'm going to say next. I'd be happy if you could give some recommendations on where to search for jobs and what requirements there are. Is it mandatory to get a TEFL? No, but for the path I would recommend for you, yes. I'm writing this mostly because I found myself a bit discouraged, and in all honesty, I do think that I need to get this extra push. I'm here to give you a savage jolt. So if you do, as you've described, and you study English teaching and you get a teacher's license and you get yourself a TEFL, there's absolutely no reason that you cannot teach in Japan. The licensing will supersede the fact that you are not a native speaker. It trumps that. So if you focus on doing this, if you focus on getting this degree and getting this teaching license and you get the TEFL, then there's no reason that you couldn't come over. And the sites that I would recommend, I've recommended before, but follow them now. This could be a good practice for you, and this may give you hope as you've not yet finished, but you could follow them. Follow jalt.org, JALT.org, and check out ohiosensei.com. It has a bi-monthly newsletter released with teaching jobs. And I can say with certainty that you are going to find jobs on there for a non-native English speaker, which are excellent given that you have strong credentials like you are planning to come out the other end of your education with. And with those strong credentials, you are going to succeed. Now, what do I think? I think before, when I made the video 3 years ago, I had not seen the same variety of jobs that I have seen now. And so that I would have had a more negatively skewed opinion of what was capable for non-natives, because the jobs that I was looking at then, non-natives would not be able to do. But it's strange because where then non-natives enter back into the job pool again is at the higher skilled level, and I only looked at those jobs when I became more highly skilled. And so it gave me a far more positive outlook on what was possible for people like yourself. So I would say an answer as well to like, how has my viewpoint changed over time? It would actually to become far more optimistic for people seeing now what I have in terms of higher education achieved by non-native speakers, and then the sort of success that they can have in Japan. And it's, how could I speculate beyond that? Like beyond my experience changing, how do I think the country will change? Well, that one is harder to say, and I'll reserve having a comment on it because I can't for the life of me now think without greater time dedicated to it what would be an accurate opinion. So there it is. We actually made our way through the email. So thank you so much. I'll plug it one more time here. Everybody who wrote in, I really appreciate that. I really enjoy answering these. It gives me a good spontaneous flow for the podcast. I really appreciate that. If you want your questions answered for life, love, death, or taxes, please do write me at davetrippanon@gmail.com, and they will very likely get onto the podcast here. Thanks so much, everybody, for listening, watching on the channel, listening on iTunes, listening on Spotify. I really appreciate that. Really appreciate you guys checking out the last video. It was simple. It was pure as the driven snow. And I love the progress that I felt I'd made, and also the interaction in the comments was excellent. If you did enjoy this on the channel, please do give a like, perhaps hit that bell notification and subscribe if you want to catch more of these. And please do consider supporting me on Patreon, because it really does. With a channel like mine, I thrive on the community support. That's really how I get out there. So the clock has run out. Could never thank you enough. Catch you in the next podcast. That's all for now.